Hi, this is Trevor Conquergood. Welcome to this week's RNK Software Club's video of the week. And the topic for this week is going to be learning about different ways that you can, navigate around your screen and help you with selecting and viewing things a little bit. So I'm just going to go to my library and make sure that it's pointing at the free monthly designs for September of 2021. So that's the latest designs. And notice in here that there's these kind of cool welcome to our lake house type of, maybe you'd make a sign or something like that if you had one of these such a things. Anyway, all right, so now we have a design on our screen, and if I use my select tool and I select it, of course it becomes highlighted. And the reason it highlights the entire design is because anytime you bring a design, using your library and designs tab and you bring them in, they come in all grouped together. So you can ungroup that. There's a tool right here on your kind of handy, always available, the dynamic toolbar, the one that changes depending on what you, are doing. This toolbar can change a little bit. Well, right now it just happens to have the ungroup tool. Of course, there's also ungroup up here on your main toolbar. Either way, when I ungroup that, it means that now when I try and select it, I won't select all of it. I'll select just a part of it. Now, one of the questions you might ask is, when you select the word welcome, it selects that whole word, but when you select the word lake, it seemed to only select a little piece of that. And I guess the reason for that is because of the difference between the word welcome and the word lake. If we look kind of more closely, when I select the word welcome, if you look over in the sequence view, you can see that it has a T in front of it, which represents a text segment. And when you select it, right away the word welcome comes up, and you can make it say, hey, or anything you want to in there, right? It's text, and you can change it. It's the Anna font, and you could change that. Now, what's different between that and where it says Lake House is these were custom digitized letters, and so they were made from artwork and digitized, and now they're simply shapes like satin paths and run stitches. You can still select them like all together. One way might be to select it by dragging a box like that. So I'm going to click off to let go and show you that when I use the select tool, it's called click and drag to select, more than one shape. And as long as it's 100% in the box that you're dragging, it will get selected. So I use that tool, and notice that if I click off and on the empty workspace and I click, then nothing is selected. And if I click on the shape, just one left click, it'll select just that specific shape. But if I click and drag to make a box, we can get everything that was in our box. Now, upon closer looking, you might notice that I also got some of the water. It was a little bit hard to get this lake house because it seems like no matter what click and drag box I get, I seem to at least get some of that water. And so we may need to have another sort of tactic to select that word lake and house. Now, there's more than one way to do lots of these things, and one easy thing might be to use the lasso selection. So with lasso selection, you can kind of like click, click, click and go around the water. Again, you need to have it fully selected to be in the selection. So if you happen to cut across the edge of the mountain, it's not going to pick up and select those mountains unless they're 100% surrounded by the lasso. But notice this time that the little waves, although they look like they're in my box, they're not highlighted in the blue highlight color. And that blue highlight color, by the way, you can control. If you're working in blues and you're finding it not as highlighting as you'd like it to be, that would be a setting in your preferences. If you look in your program preferences, and I believe it's on the view tab. Yeah, so it says highlight selection color, and I could just change that to be pink if you like. And now when you select something, it'll be pink. So that's, an interesting note to, have. All right, so I showed you how to select it using the lasso selection. Another way you might be able to select those, specific shapes would be to find them in your sequence view. See in here, I know this is welcome, and then it says to our, and then it looks like there's a run stitch. And if I click on it, that is clearly the first run stitch of that letter L. And if you kind of click on the next shape, you can get the idea that it does the bottom and then the sort of side and then the little stroke at the top, and then it's doing the next letter. And so these were hand digitized letters. And if you want to select them all, you can actually click on the what appears to be the first shape of that letter and scroll down and go through what looks like all the same stuff. And then, at some point, you get to another text segment. So if I hold down Shift and select everything, see how it selects everything in between? Only, take a look, it also picked up the word make. How did I do that? Just so you know, I'm using the wheel. I have a mouse that has a scroll wheel. And the way it works is if I put my mouse right over the sun and I scroll away from me, it gets closer. And if I scroll the mouse back to me, I go further out. And if I put my mouse up here over top of the crossed canoe paddles and I scroll in, it goes to there and out. And so I like to have my mouse, but that's not the only way to move around in your screen. And I'll tell you a few more, but let's kind of just finish up the selecting part first. So what I was trying to show you is that when I use kind of like select one shape and then hold down Shift and scroll down and got all these run stitches and that, I didn't realize that I was actually going to end up getting, other words, right? They're all the same color. They just look like all run stitches and sand stitches. So I don't really want, if you just want to get the words lake house, then what you probably need to do now is, okay, click to let go, sort of look through here and say, well, where it finishes with the E, so it does lake and then house. So there's the end of the E. Is that the last piece of the E? No, there's that piece, and then there's a run stitch, and then there's that piece, another run stitch, and then there's that piece. And I bet that's the last one because you can almost see the shape of this one screams that, that's the beginning of the word make. So now I know that I have the last segment in the word lake house, and I can sort of use my scroll wheel on my mouse to move this up, up, up until I get to the first one. And again, you hold Shift on your keyboard. Shift on the keyboard says select everything in between. That's a Windows kind of thing. In other words, if I click on this run stitch and I hold Shift and I click on this run stitch, it'll select everything in between. If I hold the Control key down, I can select that run stitch and the next piece and the next piece, but skip those two pieces and get this piece and skip those two pieces and get this piece. And then, no, I didn't really want to skip that one, so I'll get it again. So basically, as I hold the Control key down, I can select at random and pick up just the pieces that I want and click again to let go of them. So this is another way that you can select parts of a design. If you do select the word lake house, so there was the beginning of the L. Now that I kind of know what I'm looking for, scroll down and there's the beginning of that M again, so that's probably the end of the E right there. Hold Shift, select it all. While I've got it picked up, I could click on a new color in the color palette, and that would, or I could just group it. So notice I have it all selected together. If I click on my group tool, now anytime I try and select that, it'll come up as a grouped area. So now I'm just sort of kind of going over today different things like how to help you with selecting and also how to move around, because I think that's part of what really, especially when you open up a design like this, and if you look at it all zoomed out where the whole design is on your screen, you're at 37%. And notice that you can click on here and you can go, well, I'd like to see it at 100% size. And if you feel like it, you can go and look at it at 600% size. But with my wheel, I can scroll further. I can go 1200, 2400, 4800, 9600% zoomed in, and that's what it looks like. So zoom out with my scroll. So I do really use my mouse on the wheel on my mouse a lot. That said, there's other things that I like to do because you do have, of course, a zoom tool. And when you use the zoom tool, wherever you left click, you will get closer to. And if you right click, you'll go further away. So you can put your mouse over here, left click to get closer, right click to come back out again, put your mouse over here, left click to get closer. So that's another thing when you use the zoom tool. Also, with the magnifying glass tool, you can click and draw a box and it'll zoom right to that box. And if you double click on top of the magnifying glass, it zooms out to everything again. Another way you can zoom, so let's go back to the select tool and let's select the word lake house that I've now grouped together. And can you see that little kind of magnifying glass? So when you select things and there's a lot of different little symbols that show up around them, one of them is this little magnifying glass, and I can click on that and it will zoom in on whatever you select. So if you're working on a design and you pick up a little piece down here and you want to go right to that piece to look at it, click on that magnifying glass and it will bring you right to this piece again. So that's kind of a cool thing. While we're on the topic of, I guess, navigating around your designs, another thing I sometimes like to do is just pan around. So now that you get zoomed in like this, maybe you want to see what's going on up here or over here. And so now what I'm actually doing, because you can't see what I'm doing, is typing with my fingers on the keyboard. I'm going to scroll out with my wheel on my mouse, and then I'll show you again. If I use the up arrow on my keyboard, I scroll up the design. If I use the down facing arrow, I scroll down the design. If I scroll the left arrow or the right arrow, it moves to where I move it to. On that note, so we're talking about the arrow keys on your keyboard. If I need to nudge something, and nudge means you want to move it just a little bit. So maybe there's two things and you want to make something slightly closer together. And so I don't know what that would be, but maybe we'll assume the letter E needed to be moved further or closer to the letter K. Now, if you just type the arrow keys, it doesn't move the letter, it moves the whole screen. But if you hold down the control key, now I can push my arrow key on my keyboard and nudge that shape to the left by the left arrow key or to the right with the right arrow key. And so those are little tiny movements that if you just have two things and you're like, I just want a little bit of space. And of course, you can do that by click and drag to move them around. You want to wait till it looks like a hand like that, and that means you're ready to move. But now you're worried about, oh, I didn't mean to go up and down. I just wanted to go specifically to the right. And now I feel like I put it in the wrong spot. So, okay, hit undo, put it back to where it was, and then hold your control key down and use the arrow keys to nudge it. So that's all kind of interesting things that can help you with. So what we're really talking about, the arrow keys is called panning, and then nudging was when I held the control key down. On the topic of panning, probably my favorite way to pan is with the space bar. So notice if I click on my space bar that my screen turns into a hand, and I can use that hand to click and drag to move the screen around. And if I hit the space bar again, I go back to the select tool. So I can select just right that. I can zoom in on just that selection. But if I hit my space bar, I can kind of like scrub or pan, click and drag to move my screen around while I'm all zoomed in. So you don't always have to zoom back out. It's just the space bar that will turn on that panning tool. So these are all kind of interesting things that I thought might be kind of fun. We didn't fully talk about the sequence view and how that can be so helpful with selecting things. And so notice now, here, let's just notice the zoom tool becomes the pan tool when you use the pan tool. If you want to go back to the zoom tool, it's like a little arrow you can choose, the zoom or the magnifying glass or the pan. Double click on the zoom to show me all of the design. Take my select tool, select the word lake house, and so it automatically comes to this group. But those are all, within this one color, there's a bunch of different things. If I click on a new color, that's of course going to create a new color stop in the design. So now it's going to show, this deep ocean blue and then this sky blue. And what I'm doing is I'm clicking beside them. There's like little magnifying or little negative, little minus signs, and that is called collapsing. And when they're put together and collapsed, you can expand them by clicking on the plus sign. So plus says show me all the parts. Minus says just show me the colors. And a lot of times it's just helpful to just show it like this so you can really see the colors. And now you can easily use this to choose just select Lake House or just select the text from the bottom. If you're like, I didn't want the text on the bottom, now you've got a quick, easy way to select it and then hit delete and leave that part out of your sign. Or maybe you just want to select the color yellow and change it to orange because, you know, it was sunset and it just didn't seem right. So the idea is your sequence bar also really becomes part of being able to interact with your embroidery designs. There are all kinds of great things. For example, when you get them expanded like this and you're looking at it and there's all these pieces, you can just right click and see the little secondary menu that comes up. And one of the options is to expand all or collapse all. So if I say collapse all, it will. So if you've got everything opened up and you're looking at it and it seems like it's 10 miles long with all the pieces in your design and you're wanting to try and organize yourself, what colors there are, just right click and say collapse all. Another thing is there's these filters up top. So right now we're looking at all segments and all colors. But if you only want to see a specific color and not see the other ones, I just want to look at the black, select that and it'll highlight just those black colors in your design like that. You can, of course, go back to all colors at any time. Another thing that you can do is select this color, you know, let's say this where it says welcome to our, and then I can use an eyeball to hide it or show it. And so if there's any part of your design that a lot of times while we're creating, we like to, maybe we created the blue for these mountains and we had a picture that we were digitizing. And after we created the blue of the mountains, we couldn't really see where to put the white. And so we could just hide that blue and then assume I have a picture back here that I can now see where to put my white pieces over top of them. And so one more thing about this kind of sequence view is the ability to show by segment color or type, sorry, not color, but segment type. So this could say, you know, just show me the text segments. Oh, okay. So there's the welcome to R and there's the, you know, yourself, at, and home. But if you go back to all types, then of course there were other things. And so those are filters that might help you to, I guess, find the piece of the design that you want and get it at your fingertips. A lot of times for me, it's about doing something like this. I digitized all these letters. Remember, they were run stitches and satin paths. And maybe I decided, you know, I think I want to put pull compensation on all my satin paths. So I can tell it to just show me the satin path segments and then click and select only my satin paths and not be selecting any of the other types. And I can come in and look and see if I have any pull compensation on them. And if I didn't, I could add it. And so that's the purpose of why there's all these different ways to select things and all these different ways to customize it, because there's so many different things that you may want to do. Anyway, I hope this was an interesting video. I didn't have any really specific topic other than to give you guys sort of more tools to being able to browse and navigate and move around your workspace. And so I hope you enjoyed this week's video. Until next week, have a great day and bye for now.